Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. So now just to cover this small fasl, this small subsection in the section of alamat al-i'rab, the signs of i'rab, the mu'allif, he starts talking about al-mu'arabat, how those words that can accept i'rab can be broken down into two. They can be broken down into those words that will take signs of i'rab that are harakat, that are actual, the fatha, the dhamma, the kasra, and then those mu'arabat, those words that can accept i'rab, but the sign of i'rab that they're going to accept are huruf, are not necessarily just going to be harakat, but also going to be like actual letters. So for example, the muthanna, the dual noun, the sign of its signs of i'rab are all letters, right? The alif for the rafa, kitabani, and the ya for the jazm, for the jar or for the nasab, kitabaini. Now, this is not necessarily really something that you need to remember, to be honest with you, and it's already sort of understood from what we already just read previously, but he still mentioned it just as a side benefit, so we're just going to skim through it like we did for the previous thing, because again, there's not that much benefit in you knowing this, and it's not necessarily necessary for you to remember, because you already sort of know this if you've understood the previous chapter or the bigger section of this chapter, which was talking about the alamat in a more general sense. But anyhow, he says al-mu'arabat qisman, those nouns that can accept i'rab, or those things that can accept an i'rab, are of two types. قسم يعرب بالحركات, a type or a section that is yu'rabu, that is, it can accept i'rab bin harakat, with actual harakat, as I mentioned. وقسم يعرب بالحروف, and another section that is yu'rab, that accepts i'rab with huruf, letters. فالذي يعرب بالحركات أربع أنواع. So he says those things that are mu'rab with actual harakat are three. The اسم مفرد, the جمع تكسير, the جمع أنثى سالم, والفعل المضارع الذي لم يتصل بآخر شيء, and the فعل المضارع which لم يتصل, did not attach بآخر, at the end of it, شيء, anything. That's clear, inshallah. So he says كلها ترفع بالضمة, all of them, the sign of رفع is a dhamma, وتنصب بالفتحة, and the sign of nasab is a fatha, وتخفض بالكسرة, and the sign of them being مخفوض or مجرور is a kasra, وتجزم بالسكون, and the sign of it being مجزوم, for obviously only the fi'l المضارع, because the other ones can't take a jazm, is the sukun. وخرج عن ذلك ثلاث أشياء, and there are three things that are not like this. جمع مؤنث السالم ينسب بالكسرة. Yani he says that what's meant here by this is that from this general principle here, that all of these will be accepting the signs of i'rab mentioned here. So the dhamma for the rafa', the fatha for the nasab, the kasra for the khafd, and the sukun for the jazm. He says that you can actually, it's not the case pretty much. From these that we just mentioned, there are three that won't take one of these. So for example, the jam'u and the salim yunsabu al-kasra. The salim being mansub is a kasra, not a fatha. So kharaja an dhalik. It left this general principle that we just mentioned here, which is that kulluha, all of these right here, are turfa with dhamma, tunsab with fatha. Kharaja an dhalika, exited from this general principle, are three of these things mentioned here. One of them is the jam'u and the salim, which yunsabu bi kasra, becomes mansub with the kasra, not with the fatha. والاسم الذي لا ينصرف يخفض بالفتحة, and he says the noun that لا ينصرف, that's ممنوع من الصرف, the sign of it being مخفوض, of being مجرور, is a fatha, right, not the كسرة. والفعل المضارع المعتل الآخر, and the فعل المضارع which has a weak letter at the end, يجزم بحذف آخره, the sign of it being مجزوم is a dropping of its last letter, right? So these three here are an exception to the general rule here. So that's why I said this chapter here can actually be a bit confusing. And it's not really necessary for someone to really try to really memorize it, because if you already understood this chapter here, يغنيك عن هذا, يعني it's going to suffice you from actually having to understand, or not understand this, but having to memorize this, if you will. And then he goes over the things that are mu'arab with actual letters. So he says والذي يعرب بالحروف أربعة أنواع, and those things that are mu'arab with letters are three. التثنية, the dual, so the dual noun كتابان مسجدان. وجمع مذكر سالم, the sound masculine plural مسلمون. and أسماء الخمسة, the five nouns. and أفعال الخمسة, the five verbs. وهي, and the five verbs are يفعلان تفعلان يفعلون تفعلون وتفعلين. فما التثنية, so as for the dual noun, ترفع بالألف كتابان وتنسب وتخفض بالياء, and the sign for being منصوب or مخفوض is the ياء كتابين. وأما جمع مذكر سالم, as for the sound masculine plural, فيرفع بالواو وينسب ويخفض بالياء, that's quite clear. ومن الأسماء الخمسة, ask for the 5 nouns, so أبوك, أخوك, حموك, ذوك, and أفوك, and ذو مال. ترفع بالواو, the sign of being مرفوع is the واو, وتنصب بالألف, and the sign of being منصوب is the alif. So I'll say, for example, أبوك, but I'll say إن أباك, ويخفض or تخفض بالياء, and likewise it's مخفوض with the ya, so في أبيك. وأما على فعل خمسة, as the 5 verbs, فترفع بالنون يفعلون, وتنسب وتجزم بحذفها لم يفعلوا. That's clear also, inshallah. And with that, alhamdulillah, we've covered the concept or the chapter of معرفة علامات الإعراب. So this is the most important chapter of Al-Ajrumiyyah. It's the most important chapter for someone who's trying to understand Arabic grammar. So if you don't understand this chapter, I recommend you study it multiple times. And it's normal, it's very normal for someone having to study this chapter multiple times in order to master it. It's very rare for someone to just go over this chapter once and actually fully understand it. But rather, if you still need help understanding this chapter, go ahead and do the videos on it again 2 or 3 times, and inshallah after that, and after also doing the exercises, inshallah you should have mastered it. Once you've mastered this chapter, the rest of grammar is like candy. It's fun, it's enjoyable. But this is the steel door that you need to break through in order to get to that enjoyment and that ease and that joy of Arabic grammar. You have to go through this steel door, which is alamat al-i'rab. Once you've opened that door, the rest is very easy. If you never open that door, you're always going to be having really a lot of difficulty in understanding Arabic grammar. So I really recommend you try to master this chapter.